Ambassador Park Hyun felt the cold metal beneath her boots as she stepped onto the dark platform. The NIGMA throne world was nothing like Earth. Everything here was made of black stone that seemed to eat light. The air tasted like metal and death. Above her, the alien sky glowed red from their dying star. She had traveled across the galaxy for this moment. Behind her, the human transport ship waited, ready to take her home. But first, she had a job to do. The future of humanity depended on the next few minutes. The NIGMA creatures surrounded her like living nightmares. They stood twice as tall as any human, their bodies covered in crystal armor that grew from their skin. Their faces had no expression. Humans could understand. Multiple eyes glowed like tiny suns. When they moved, their crystal shells made sounds like wind chimes in a storm. The Supreme Overmind sat on a throne made from the bones of 1,000 different species. Hyun had read the reports. She knew what happened to civilizations that refused to submit. Entire worlds turned into feeding grounds. Billions of lives ended to satisfy the NIGMA hunger. "So small," one of the creatures whispered. Its voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "So weak," Hyun kept walking forward. She had been chosen for this mission because she never showed fear. Even now, surrounded by monsters, her heart beat steady and calm. She stopped 10 feet from the throne and bowed slightly. Not out of respect, but because diplomacy required. Certain gestures. "I come with a message from Earth and all human colonies," she said. Her voice carried clearly in the alien chamber. "We know what you are. We know what you do to other species." The Supreme Overmind leaned forward, its massive head tilted like a curious insect. "Humans," it said, and the word sounded like a curse. "You dare come to our sacred world? You dare speak to us as equals?" "I come to offer you a choice," Hyun replied. "Leave our worlds alone. Find somewhere else to hunt. There are empty systems in the outer rim, places where no one lives." The NIGMA around her began to make that sound again. At first, Hyun thought it was anger. Then she realized they were laughing. The sound grew louder, like crystal breaking. In a thunderstorm, the creatures swayed back and forth, their shells clicking together in sick joy. "She thinks we negotiate," hissed one of them. "She thinks we make deals with food." The Supreme Overmind raised one massive claw. The laughter stopped instantly. "Tell us, little human, what happens if we refuse your generous offer?" Hyun looked directly into its glowing eyes. "Then you will learn why no other species in this galaxy has ever successfully conquered Earth. You will discover what happens when humans stop being polite." More laughter erupted from the creatures. But Hyun noticed something. The Supreme Overmind was not laughing. Its ancient eyes studied her with new interest. "You threaten us?" it asked. "Your species barely reaches beyond your own star system. We have consumed entire galaxies. We have fed on civilizations older than your planet." "This is not a threat," Hyun said firmly. "This is a warning. We are giving you information. What you do with that information is your choice." She reached into her diplomatic pouch and pulled out a small device. With careful movements, she activated it. A hologram appeared between her and the throne. It showed human colonies across the galaxy. Millions of people living their lives, building families, creating art and music and dreams. "These are our people," she said. "They are not soldiers. They are not warriors. They are farmers and teachers and children. But if you attack them, they will become something else, something you have never faced before." The Supreme Overmind studied the hologram. "Soft flesh," it repeated. "Weak bones, no claws, no armor. What could such creatures possibly do to us?" Hyun turned off the hologram. "We gave you a choice. We offered you peace. When you reject that offer, remember this moment. Remember that we tried to warn you." She turned her back on the most dangerous creature in the known galaxy and began walking toward her ship. Behind her, the NIGMA whispered among themselves. Some wanted to kill her immediately. Others argued for capturing her alive for information. The Supreme Overmind watched her go with growing curiosity. No species had ever turned their back on the NIGMA and lived. Yet this small human female walked away without fear, without hurry, as if she held some secret weapon. "Prepare the fleets," it commanded. "Target their outer colonies first. We will show these humans what happens to species that forget their place." But as Park Hyun's ship disappeared into hyperspace, the Supreme Overmind felt something it had not experienced in a million years of conquest. For just a moment, watching that small figure walk away with such confidence, it had felt the first whisper of doubt. Colonel Kim Tae stood on the observation deck of the Colony Command Center, watching the morning sun rise over the wheat fields of Kepler 442b. 3 months ago, this had been a peaceful farming world. Children played in the cornfields while their parents worked the soil. Now everything had changed. The warning from Ambassador Park Hyun had reached them 2 weeks before the NIGMA fleet appeared on their sensors. 2 weeks to prepare for war. 2 weeks to turn farmers into fighters. "Sir, the alien ships just dropped out of hyperspace," reported Lieutenant Song Min, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. 47 vessels. They're bigger than anything we've ever seen." Tae nodded and activated the colony-wide communication system. "This is Colonel Kim Tae speaking to all residents of Kepler 442b. Today we make our stand. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of." Down in the farming districts, Old Man Park Se put down his morning coffee and picked up the rifle hidden beneath his kitchen table. His granddaughter Yoon E, barely 18 years old, checked the ammunition count on her pistol. Every person on the colony from age 16 to 90 had a weapon and knew how to use it. The NIGMA had studied other species for millions of years. They knew exactly how civilizations reacted to invasion. First came panic, then desperate attempts at negotiation, then scattered resistance that quickly collapsed. They expected the same from humans. They were wrong. The first NIGMA harvesting. Drones descended toward the main settlement like metallic rain. Each drone was the size of a small building, equipped with energy weapons that could level city blocks. They had never failed to break enemy resistance within hours. But as they approached the human colony, something unexpected happened. Instead of fleeing civilians, they found empty streets. The humans had vanished. "Where are they?" buzzed the NIGMA drone commander through its communication link. "Sensors show life forms, but we see no targets." The answer came in the form of explosions. The humans had spent 2 weeks digging tunnels beneath every street, placing explosive charges under every landing zone. As the drones touched down, the ground erupted beneath them. From hidden positions in reinforced basements, human defenders opened fire. They used simple weapons, nothing as advanced as NIGMA technology, but they used them in ways the aliens had never encountered. Young Park Jin, who had been studying agricultural engineering just months before, now lay on a rooftop with a modified hunting rifle. He had learned to aim for the joints in the drone armor, the places where their crystal shells connected. 1 precise shot could disable a limb. 3 shots could bring down a harvester. The NIGMA sent reinforcement waves. Surely these primitive humans would break under superior firepower. Instead, they found their own weapons turned against them. The humans had captured disabled drones and stripped them for parts. Within days, human fighters carried NIGMA energy. "Weapons! How are they learning so fast?" demanded the NIGMA fleet commander. "It took our scientists centuries to develop this technology." The answer was simple. Humans were not just defending their homes. They were studying their enemy with every battle. Lieutenant Song Min had organized teams of engineers and mechanics who examined every piece of alien wreckage. They learned how NIGMA weapons worked, then built better versions. Dr. Choi Yoon ran the Colony Medical Center, but now she spent her time developing countermeasures against NIGMA bioweapons. When the aliens released plague drones designed to weaken human immune systems, she already had vaccines ready. The siege stretched from days into weeks, then into months. The NIGMA had never encountered anything like it. Other species fought until they lost hope, then surrendered. Humans fought harder when things got desperate. 8-year-old Kim so became a symbol of human resistance when she crawled through ventilation shafts to deliver ammunition to trapped defenders. Her father had died in the first wave of attacks, but she never cried. She just asked for more bullets to carry. The NIGMA tried psychological warfare, broadcasting messages about the futility of resistance. The humans responded by playing Earth music through loudspeakers during battles. Nothing demoralized alien invaders, quite like hearing human children sing lullabies while their parents destroyed million-credit war machines. By month 3, the NIGMA fleet was running low on supplies and soldiers. They had expected to harvest the entire colony in a week. Instead, they were losing ships daily to increasingly creative human tactics. Colonel Kim Tae stood in the ruins of what had once been the colony school, now converted into a fortress. His uniform was torn and dirty, but his eyes still burned. With determination, "Sir," Lieutenant Song Min approached with a communication device. "The NIGMA fleet is requesting permission to withdraw." Tae smiled grimly. "Tell them they should have listened to Ambassador Park Hyun." As the surviving NIGMA ships limped away from Kepler 442b, they carried with them a troubling report. Humans did not fight wars the way other species did. They fought like every battle was their last, like surrender was not even a concept they understood. The NIGMA High Command received the report with growing unease. For the first time in their species' history, they had been forced to retreat from an inferior enemy. They did not yet understand that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could imagine. Dr. Lee So-young had not slept in 72 hours. Her eyes burned from staring at alien genetic codes, but she could not stop working. Not when the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The captured NIGMA laboratory on Lunar Base hummed with activity as her team worked around the clock to understand their enemy. "Professor Lee," called her assistant young researcher Kim Han, "you need to see this. The protein chains don't make sense." Lee walked over to the holographic display showing NIGMA biological structures. After weeks of study, she had begun to understand something horrifying about their enemies. The NIGMA were not just conquerors, they were something far worse. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the genetic patterns. "See how their DNA connects to these mechanical components? It's not natural evolution. Someone or something designed them this way." Her team gathered around the display. Dr. Park Sang, the colony's best biochemist, frowned at the data. "Are you saying they were created?" "Worse," Lee replied. "They were created to be dependent. Look at these cellular structures. They cannot produce essential nutrients on their own. They have to take them from other living beings. The implications hit everyone at once. The NIGMA were not choosing to be predators. They were built to be predators. Their entire species would die without constantly consuming other civilizations." Lee activated the emergency communication system to reach the War Council on Earth. Admiral Choi Jun appeared on the screen, his face worn from months of preparing humanity's defenses. "Admiral," Lee said without preamble, "they're parasites. Their entire civilization depends on consuming others. They literally cannot survive without conquest." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. Admiral Choi had fought in 3 interstellar conflicts before the NIGMA arrived. He understood what this meant. "Then negotiation is impossible," he said grimly. "It's not about territory or resources. It's about survival, theirs or ours." "Exactly," Lee confirmed. "We cannot coexist with them. One species has to die." Admiral Choi turned to Captain Namdal, a woman whose reputation for deep space reconnaissance was legendary throughout human space. She had spent her career mapping unknown regions of the galaxy, always alone, always in danger. "Captain Nam," the Admiral said, "I need you to find every NIGMA stronghold, map their supply lines, find their breeding worlds. We're going to cut them off at the root." Namdal nodded. Her ship, the Silent Runner, was already prepared for the most dangerous mission of her life. "How long do I have?" "As long as it takes," Choi replied. "But work fast. They won't ignore what happened at Kepler 442b much longer." Captain Nam was right. 3 days after her ship disappeared into hyperspace, the NIGMA response came with devastating fury. The first planet to die was New Sol, a mining colony with 2 million inhabitants. The NIGMA planet-killer weapon struck without warning. One moment, families were eating dinner, and children were playing in parks. The next moment, the entire world was a ball of fire. Colony Administrator Jung Min managed to send one final message before the end. "Tell Earth we died as humans. Tell them we never surrendered." New Busan followed 6 hours later, then New Daegu, 3 human worlds, 9 million people, gone in a single day. The news reached Earth like a physical blow. In the emergency session of the Human Defense Council, voices rose in anger and despair. Some called for immediate surrender, others demanded revenge. President Kim Yeon stood before the assembly, her face pale but determined. The NIGMA have shown us their true nature. They could have targeted our military bases. They could have attacked our fleets. Instead, they murdered civilians. They killed children. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the room. They want us to be afraid. They want us to surrender out of terror. But they have made a crucial mistake. They have shown humans exactly how far they are willing to go. In the audience, General Yoon-gi rose to his feet. His own son had been visiting New Seoul when the planet died. "Madam President, what are your orders?" "We mobilize everything," Kim Yeon declared. "Every ship, every soldier, every resource humanity possesses. There can be no compromise now. No negotiation, no surrender. Only total victory or extinction." Across human space, the call went out. Merchant ships were converted to warships. Civilian factories began producing weapons. Children as young as 12 began training for combat. Humanity was preparing for a war unlike anything they had ever fought. Dr. Lee So-young returned to her laboratory with new purpose. The NIGMA had revealed themselves as parasites who could not survive without consuming others. Now she would find their weakness. Every parasite had one. Captain Namdal received the news of the destroyed worlds while hiding in an asteroid field near a NIGMA breeding facility. She watched alien ships come and go, mapping their routes, counting their numbers. Each piece of information brought humanity closer to victory. On Earth, Admiral Choi Jun stood before a holographic display showing NIGMA territory. Red dots marked their confirmed positions. Yellow dots showed suspected bases. The galaxy was infected with them. "They think they've won," he said to his staff. "They think killing our civilians will break our spirit. They don't understand humans at all." The NIGMA had indeed made a crucial error. By showing their willingness to commit genocide, they had removed any possibility of mercy from human hearts. They had transformed a territorial dispute into an existential war, and in wars of extinction, humans had never lost. The real war was about to begin. The transformation began quietly on a Tuesday morning on Earth. 8-year-old Park Ji-hai was learning mathematics when the school announcement came. Classes were cancelled. All children would now spend their mornings in regular studies and their afternoons learning basic military tactics. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on every human world. The kindergarten teacher Lee Min-soo taught 5-year-olds how to hide from alien sensors. The retired grandmother Kim Ok-sun learned to assemble explosive devices. The teenage musician Nam Ji-woo put down his guitar and picked up a rifle. Humanity was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, an entire species turning itself into a weapon. Captain Yoon Jae stood in the hangar bay of the captured NIGMA bioship, running her hands along its living walls. The vessel was still alive, its alien flesh warm to the touch. Human engineers had spent months learning to communicate with the ship's organic computer systems. "It's like riding a wild animal," she explained to her crew. "The ship wants to return to its masters. We have to convince it that we are its masters now." The bioship squadron was humanity's strangest creation. Captured NIGMA vessels, their alien minds reprogrammed to serve human pilots. The ships looked like giant insects, but they flew with human cunning and human rage. "Captain," called Lieutenant Choi Ho from the navigation station, "we're approaching the NIGMA supply convoy. 15 transport ships, protected by 8 war vessels." Yoon Jae smiled coldly. "Remember, we're not just destroying their supplies, we're sending a message. Every NIGMA in the galaxy needs to know that their own weapons are being used against them." The attack was swift and merciless, human-controlled. Bioships tore through NIGMA defenses like wolves through sheep. But this was not random destruction. Every move was calculated, every strike designed for maximum psychological impact. On Earth, Admiral Choi Jun watched the battle reports with grim satisfaction. The war room buzzed with activity as staff officers coordinated attacks across 40 different star systems. This was not the desperate defense of scattered colonies anymore. This was organized, systematic warfare. "Admiral," reported Colonel Park Yoonji. The Psychological Warfare Division has completed their analysis of NIGMA communication patterns. We've identified weaknesses in their hive mind structure. The discovery was revolutionary. The NIGMA shared thoughts and emotions through a complex biological network. But this strength was also a weakness. If you could introduce the right kind of interference, you could turn their own minds against them. Dr. Yoon Seok, humanity's leading expert on alien psychology, had developed something he called neural poison, carefully crafted messages that exploited flaws in NIGMA thinking patterns. When NIGMA intercepted these transmissions, their own minds would begin to doubt, to fear, to question their supreme overmind's commands. The effects were immediate and devastating. NIGMA fleets began making tactical errors. Ships abandoned their formations. Some vessels simply stopped responding to orders entirely. They made one mistake, Admiral Choi broadcast to human fleets across the galaxy. His voice carried to every ship, every colony, every human listening post. They thought, we would break, they don't understand, we don't break, we bend, we adapt, and then we strike back twice as hard. The war began to turn in ways no one had expected. Human forces did not simply fight the NIGMA. They studied them, learned from them, and used that knowledge as a weapon. Engineer Kim Si-jin had been a civilian mechanic before the war. Now she led teams that jury-rigged, captured NIGMA technology onto human ships. Weapons that had taken the aliens centuries to develop were reverse-engineered and improved within months. The NIGMA think in straight lines, she explained to her team. They build things one way and never change. We think in circles. We adapt. Her modified ships were nightmares of improvised engineering, human hulls grafted with alien armor, Earth-built computers controlling NIGMA bioweapons. Every vessel was unique, unpredictable, impossible for the enemy to counter. The psychological warfare campaign reached its peak when Commander Park Dong-hyun's team successfully hacked into the NIGMA communication network. For 1 hour, every NIGMA in the galaxy heard the same message, recordings of human children singing lullabies. The effect on the alien hive mind was catastrophic. These were the voices of the soft flesh they had tried to destroy. But the children sounded happy, unafraid, even playful. The NIGMA could not understand how prey could sound so confident. Fear began to spread through their ranks like a disease. For creatures that had never experienced doubt, the emotion was paralyzing. NIGMA fleets began retreating from battles they could have won. Commanders started ignoring orders from their supreme overmind. Captain Nam Dal returned from her deep space reconnaissance with detailed maps of every NIGMA stronghold. Her data revealed something shocking. The aliens were pulling back from their outer territories, consolidating their forces around their core worlds. They're afraid, she reported to the War Council. For the first time in their species' history, they're running away. The retreat accelerated as human forces pressed their advantage. Bioship squadrons struck at breeding worlds, using the aliens' own vessels to destroy their nurseries. Human engineers sabotaged NIGMA supply lines, turning their logistics network into a weapon against them. Young Park Min-ho, barely 20 years old, became famous throughout human space for developing the mirror virus. When NIGMA tried to communicate with their captured bioships, the virus would reflect their own thoughts back at them, multiplied and distorted until their minds broke from the feedback. The final blow came when the human fleet surrounded the NIGMA home system. The supreme overmind, ancient beyond human understanding, sent out its last transmission to the galaxy. The message was not filled with rage or defiance. For the first time in 1,000,000 years of conquest, a NIGMA communication contained pure, undiluted terror. The supreme overmind had finally understood what it meant to be prey. Humanity had become something new, not just defenders of their worlds, but architects of their enemies' destruction. They had turned the NIGMA's own nature against them, used their weapons more effectively than their creators ever could. The galaxy watched in awe and fear as the human war machine completed its work. An entire species had transformed itself to survive, and in doing so had become unstoppable. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like death itself, arriving at the doorstep of gods. 3,000 ships surrounded the NIGMA home system, blocking every escape route. But these were not the same vessels that had defended human colonies months earlier. Many had been transformed into something far more terrifying. Captain Yoon Jae piloted her bioship through the outer defenses, feeling the alien vessel's living hull pulse beneath her hands. The ship had once served the NIGMA Empire, hunting and destroying countless civilizations. Now it obeyed human commands, its organic weapons turned against its former masters. All bioship squadrons, this is command. Admiral Choi Jun's voice crackled through the communication system. Remember, we are not here for conquest, we are here to end this. Inside her modified bioship, Lieutenant Park So-min felt the alien technology merged with her nervous system. The integration process had been voluntary, but irreversible. She would never be fully human again, but she could control these living weapons better than any NIGMA pilot ever could. "I can feel their fear," she reported to her squadron leader. "The ships are trying to disconnect from the hive mind. They know what's coming." Dr. Lee So-young watched from the science vessel Harmony as her bioweapons spread across the NIGMA. Homeworlds. Years of research had led to this moment. The weapon was invisible, unstoppable, and absolutely precise. It did not kill the NIGMA directly. Instead, it severed their connection to the symbiotic technology that kept them alive. "Neural pathways are breaking down on the third planet," reported her assistant Kim Tae-hyun. "The NIGMA there have approximately 6 hours before complete system failure." Lee nodded grimly. She had designed the weapon to be merciful in its own way. The NIGMA would not suffer. They would simply stop being able to live. On the flagship Indomitable, Admiral Choi Jun stood before the main viewing screen, watching entire planets go dark as the bioweapon did its work. Cities that had controlled galactic trade for millions of years fell silent. Space stations that had coordinated the destruction of countless worlds powered down forever. "Sir," called Lieutenant Bae-soo from the communication station, "the Supreme Overmind is requesting to speak with you." Choi considered for a moment. "Put it through." The hologram that appeared was barely recognizable as the proud creature that had once dismissed human warnings. The Supreme Overmind's crystal exoskeleton was cracked and dull. Its multiple eyes flickered with fading light. "You have won," it said, its voice like broken glass. "My species dies, but know this, humans. We were not evil. We were made to be what we are. We had no choice." Admiral Choi's expression never changed. "Neither did the billions you murdered. Neither did the children on New Seoul, New Busan, and New Daegu. We warned you," he continued. "Ambassador Park Hyun came to your throne world in peace. She offered you a chance to find another way. You chose to kill our families instead." The Supreme Overmind's form began to flicker as its life support systems failed. "The galaxy will remember what you have done here. They will fear you as they feared us." "Good," Choi replied. "Let them remember. Let them know what happens to those who threaten human children." The hologram faded to nothing. Across the NIGMA home system, the last lights went out forever. Captain Namdal led the landing teams to the NIGMA capital world. Her boots echoed in the empty corridors of the Great Palace, where human ambassadors had once been mocked. Now only silence filled these halls. "It's over," she reported to the fleet. "No life signs detected anywhere in the system." But ending the NIGMA was only part of humanity's purpose here. Teams of scientists and engineers spread across the dead worlds, documenting everything. They catalogued NIGMA technology, studied their history, and learned from their mistakes. Dr. Choi Min-jun, humanity's leading xenobiologist, made a disturbing discovery in the NIGMA genetic archives. "Admiral," he called through his communicator, "you need to see this. The NIGMA were created by someone else. They were designed to be parasites." The implications were staggering. Somewhere in the galaxy, another species had engineered the NIGMA. As biological weapons, they had created a race that could only survive by consuming others, then unleashed them on the universe. "Who made them?" Admiral Choi asked. "Unknown," Min-jun replied. "But their creators might still be out there." Lieutenant Bae-soo worked at her communication station, preparing to broadcast humanity's message to the galaxy. The announcement would reach every inhabited system, every space station, every ship traveling between the stars. "Send the message," Admiral Choi ordered. "Let everyone know what happened here. The transmission was simple and direct. "This is Admiral Choi Jun of the Human Defense Fleet. The NIGMA Empire has been destroyed. They were warned to leave human colonies alone. They chose war instead. Let all species remember this day. Humanity seeks peace, but we will end any threat to our people." As the message spread across the galaxy, reactions were immediate and varied. Some species celebrated the end of the NIGMA threat. Others worried about humanity's newfound power. A few began planning to test human resolve for themselves. Young engineer Park Ji-woo worked in the ruins of a NIGMA weapons facility, carefully dismantling alien technology. "We can't leave any of this behind," she explained to her team. "If another species finds these weapons, they might think they can use them against us." The cleanup took months. Every NIGMA weapon was destroyed or taken by human forces. Every piece of their biotechnology was either studied or eliminated. Nothing remained that could threaten the galaxy again. Captain Nam Dal stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking out at the dead system one final time. The planets still orbited. Their red star, but they were empty now. Silent monuments to the consequences of threatening humanity. Was it worth it? Asked her second-in-command. Lieutenant Ko Seung-ho Namdal thought about the children who had died on New Seoul. She remembered the families torn apart by NIGMA planet killers. She recalled Ambassador Park Hyun's warning, ignored and mocked. "They had a choice," she said finally. "We gave them every opportunity to choose peace. They chose to murder our families instead. This is the result of their choice, not ours." The human fleet departed the NIGMA home system, leaving behind only automated beacons warning other species to stay away. The dead worlds would serve as a reminder to the galaxy of what happened when humanity's children were threatened. But as they traveled home, the humans carried with them a troubling question. Who had created the NIGMA? Who had designed a race of living weapons and set them loose on the universe? Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other eyes were watching, other minds were planning. The NIGMA had been just the beginning. Humanity had won their first galactic war, but they were already preparing for the next one. The galaxy would never be the same.